Hi friends, new and regular listeners. This is Red Ice Radio. My name is Henrik Palmgren and we are coming to you from Göteborg in Sweden. We do radio programs on a wide variety of subjects, all that we consider to be of interest and of importance. I guess you can say compared to the junk that you are being fed from the mainstream media news sources. And we do like to focus on things of importance, but also on things that hopefully will engage you to ponder a little bit more and philosophize a little bit more as well. So it's good to have you all with us today, and I hope that you are comfortable wherever you are in the world and ready for another interesting radio program. If you're new to Red Ice, the website or this radio program, I suggest you go over to the website and read more about what we do and take a look around. Check through our free radio archive with a year of radio programs up there for you, and check out our members area as well if you want to expand your horizon even more. The website is redicecreations.com. And today we have a guest back with us on the show that we haven't had on the program for about 2 years now. We have occult history author Peter Lavenda joining us today. He, of course, is the author of the acclaimed Sinister Forces trilogy and also Unholy Alliance, a history of the Nazi involvement with the occult. And not only we have been hungry to get Peter back on the program, but also many of our listeners have requested that we invite Peter back to talk about some of his more recent work. He's released 3 books since we last talked. The Mao of Business, Guerrilla Trade Techniques for the New China. Stairway to Heaven, Chinese Alchemists, Jewish Kabbalists, and the Art of Spiritual Transformation. And his latest one is on the Masons, called The Secret Temple, Masons, Mysteries, and the Founding of America. And the last book here that we mentioned, The Secret Temple, is something that I'd like to go into in our second hour together with Peter and focus on the Masons. But for those of you who want to check out his website, pop on over to sinisterforces.info. It seems to be tricky to get on there at the moment, but if you do want to get more information right away about his new books, I suggest you check out the links that we are going to provide for you on our website, directed to Amazon. And of course, go into our archive and check out our program that we did with Peter back in 2007, then specifically about the Sinister Forces trilogy. But with that, welcome back to Red Ice Radio, Peter, and thank you for coming on again and spending some of your time with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it the last time. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it this time. Excellent.
Thank you, Peter. And, I'd like to begin to talk a little bit about Stairway to Heaven, Chinese Alchemists, Jewish Kabbalists, and the Art of Spiritual Transformation. Again here then, with the exception of your new book on the Mason, you've obviously kind of shifted your focus over to China in your 2 books before that, before the latest one. And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that and why you've been wanting to look at China, and maybe if the evidence, so to speak, that you've been following had been leading you there, or if there's something else that has allured you to look at this eastern country.
Well, I've been involved with China for quite a long time. I studied Mandarin back in the 1970s in New York City. And then beginning in 1984, I started to do business in China, working with a small export company located about 2 blocks from the World Trade Center in New York City. So from that point, I began to become very heavily involved in China trade. But the reason for my studying Mandarin back in the 1970s had nothing to do with business. I wanted to study books that had not been translated yet about Chinese alchemy. I felt that this was a very interesting area of research that had been neglected by Western scholars for the most part. So I began to study Chinese, and that sort of, after a while, led me into doing business in China for this small company. So I've been doing business there since 1984 until today. So that's about 25 years of working in China. But the business in China gave me the opportunity to visit a lot of the temples and sacred sites in China that still exist. Many of them, of course, were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution or during the revolution itself. Many were closed down, turned into other things, but there were a handful of very interesting temples that were still left, Taoist temples, some Confucian temples, some Chinese Buddhist temples. So I made that part of my work when I was doing business in China. I always found time to visit these temples and to find out what was still going on. In addition, I went to Taiwan, other places in Southeast Asia, and I lived in Malaysia for 7 years. And that allowed me to travel in that area and to do a lot of research on Asian occultism, let's say Asian esoteric arts, which I think have a lot to tell us about Western esoteric arts as well. There's a continuum of knowledge and practice that I find very striking.
Very interesting. And before we get into the Chinese alchemy topic, I just want to ask you, I guess generally, since you've been doing business now then for about 25 years in China, how have you seen it change in the last, I guess we can focus on the last 10 or 15 years or so, and there's a tremendous amount of money obviously pouring in from the Western world into China. What's your overarching perception of the country? Where is it heading? Considering, I guess, its alleged communist roots, it's a extremely capitalist country, obviously. Where do you see things are going with that, Peter?
Well, when I first went to China in the 80s, the place was a very mysterious, very cold, very secretive sort of place. It was you would land in the middle of the night in Beijing, and you would take a taxi to your hotel, and you saw nothing but darkness. You saw no street lights. You would see fires burning in the distance. You didn't know what was going on. It was like a bad Blade Runner film. And then from that point until now, the transformation has been absolutely unbelievable. I don't think any country in the world has seen that massive amount of transformation, at least in the major cities. I think the countryside is struggling to catch up. But in the major cities like Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou, you'll see just tremendous growth and tremendous modernization. The problem is it's creating a kind of spiritual crisis, I believe, for the Chinese people. In the old days, when I would take Chinese delegations to the West, we would visit New York or some other Western city. We would visit a famous church like St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. And the Chinese delegation members would walk into this building, and I would lead them around, and they would come back out and say, what is the purpose of this building? Is it a meeting hall? They had absolutely no concept because religion had been effectively wiped out under Mao and since then. So that there is no moral structure in China beyond the Communist Party. That's the tricky thing. The Communist Party is struggling to maintain power, and of course they still have power. They have government power, political power. Economic power is questionable, but they can still call the shots. If China loses the Communist Party, I wonder what will replace it as their moral or ethical philosophy, because religion has fallen by the wayside. There is a kind of Christian resurgence there. There is a bit of Buddhism coming back, mostly for the tourists. A lot of tourists from Taiwan and Hong Kong and Chinese people from the Chinese diaspora around the world love to go to China to visit the temples, so they've reopened many of these temples. But I don't think the Chinese people themselves feel any particular attraction to all of this religion that is being promoted for the tourists. So it will be interesting to me to see what happens. What is it? I mean, is capitalism itself necessarily atheistic? If it is, then China will be the dominant force in the world in the years to come. And this is what I'm watching very carefully.
By the way, you mentioned a little bit about the buildings and so forth. How generally, what can you say about the architecture that is springing up over there in terms of the new developments and the new buildings? Is it dry? Is it, as we perceive of the Soviet-style communistic era, very, very dry and very kind of efficient, as you said?
Well, all of the architecture back in the 80s was just exactly that, Soviet-style architecture, virtually anywhere in the country. They were copying the Soviets. Of course, the Soviets were present there in China in large numbers as engineers, as trading partners. So it was very Soviet style. Now the architecture is phenomenal. They are building skyscrapers everywhere. If you go to Shanghai, to the Pudong district, which is the new sort of industrial zone, commercial zone, banking zone, you will find block after block after block of new skyscrapers, each one different. Each one different, with a different design, different color schemes, different architecture completely. You will not see two buildings identical anywhere. It is a strange, very strange experience because they're creating a city out of nothing. They're creating an entire culture out of